guys, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about range mags and home defense mags and just AR15 magazines in general, and which ones I found to be kind of the most reliable and kind of the best value for your dollar. Obviously, if you can buy the nicest mags, which I'll go over in a second, but I would say it was probably the Gen 3P mags, then absolutely load up on those. But this is kind of if you need some range mags cheap, or you don't mind having some mags that are specifically for professional or serious use, but you want to have some cheap mags that you don't mind just taking to the range and they don't have to be the most reliable things on the planet, then there's some other ones down here for you. But first of all, let's go over these mags, which I'll start off the bat, I do not suggest. These are some CAA magazines. These are made by Command Arms, and they are almost identical, if not identical, to IWI magazines. And this company is based out of Israel from what I can tell, or from what I've seen. Now, I bought these magazines years ago, back whenever I couldn't find anything else, back I believe it was whenever Sandy Hook happened. But anyways, so I bought these mags. I found them in the store. I wasn't sure if they were good or not, but I went ahead and bought them because they were only about $10, $11. From what I've seen, they're a little bit more expensive than that now, but I would not suggest these mags, mainly because the follower on this thing is so incredibly stiff. It's super hard to load. And I did get some malfunctions out of these, not a lot. I've probably fired about, I don't know, I have 3 of these mags, and I've probably fired around 100 rounds, maybe through all 3 of them total, which is not a lot, but I had a couple malfunctions with steel case with these, and like 1 malfunction with brass case from what I could remember. And generally, if I get a malfunction out of a magazine, especially when it's clean, I won't really trust it, and it's not really worth messing with at that point. But I mean, if you find a really cheap, I guess a really good deal, and you find these things cheap, say, I don't know, under $8 or something, sure, why not? It's a mag, and during political seasons, why not have a few extras you can either sell or just have kind of stored away, just to make yourself feel better about things, I guess. But I wouldn't suggest those, again, unless you find them just real cheap. This is an ETS mag. A lot of people love these things, and I really want to like it because the follower on here is super smooth. It doesn't tilt either direction. No matter where I push in on it, it doesn't tilt. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why this thing keeps malfunctioning. Now, it only malfunctions with steel case ammo. If I use brass, works just fine. I guess it's the friction maybe, but with steel case ammo, what the problem I was having was the follower would lock in place probably about right here when I had about 4 or 5 rounds left, and it would just get stuck. The rounds looked like they were up against the feed lip, but whenever I was firing, the bolt would go over the rounds and just hear a click. And I was like, okay, that's weird. So I tap racked and still wouldn't pick up a round. And so I pulled out the mag to see what was going on, and I saw that the rounds were still up all the way. So I gave him a good slap, gave him a good tap, put him back in, and then it worked fine. So I imagine that the steel case rounds had too much friction with this type of the material that this magazine's made out of. Never had that problem with brass. I've only had that problem with the steel case. So it was weird. So I thought, well, maybe my magazine's dirty. So after the range that day, took it home, cleaned it out real good, and went back to the range, I don't know, maybe a week later, tried them again. Exact same thing happened, and it was super frustrating. So again, I haven't had that problem with brass case, just with steel. So if you shoot steel case, and again, this could just be something specific. There could be a burr somewhere in there, but I've looked at it pretty good on the inside. I can't see anything that looks wrong. So if you shoot just brass, then this is probably fine. But if you shoot steel case, I wouldn't necessarily suggest it. And especially at the price point, you can get a Gen 3P mag or Lancer or some of the other ones out there that are nicer for the exact same price. And I would suggest go ahead and getting those over this. And I had the exact same problem. It's worth mentioning. I'll do a video on Glock mags specifically, but with the ETS Glock mags, I had the exact same problem. Not always. If they're clean, then they usually work fine. But with the Glock mags, I also had with steel case ammo. I haven't had a ton of malfunctions, but those are the only magazines for Glocks that I've had malfunctions with, and that includes a lot of the cheap Korean-made mags, and including the P mags as well for the Glock. So just something to take note. If you don't fire steel case, then sure, buy these things. But for the price, again, I'd suggest getting other mags. These work fine for the range. If you already have some laying around, no reason to throw them out. Keep them. So next on the list is Hex Mag. Again, I bought this back in the day whenever people were panic buying stuff for the first time. I think it was after Sandy Hook. But anyway, so I bought these, I think at a gun show. And I think they have a newer generation of these out, but these are the ones that I have. I think they're probably one of the first generations. I haven't had any malfunctions with brass case with these. I have had a couple with steel. So again, I don't know, maybe it's the material they're made out of, but I wouldn't suggest these necessarily for duty use. Again, these are fine for range mags, but I think I saw these for maybe $8 or $9 the other day, which for that price, you know, they're not bad if you want to pick some up, sure. But again, you can get, which I'll talk about in a second, Gen 2 PMags for about the same price. So again, unless you're just having a hard time finding magazines, I wouldn't necessarily buy these. Next on the list, and this is probably the cheapest quote-unquote mag that I would suggest using for serious use. These are the Amend Second magazines. I have yet to have a malfunction out of these things, and I don't know if you can see it up there. There's dirt caked on this mag, and I'm sure there's all kinds of dirt on the inside of this thing too. But the material itself feels kind of flimsy and cheap compared to something like a PMag or a Lancer or even the ETS mag. But I have yet to have a malfunction out of these things. So even though it feels cheap, it works. So these I think I got on sale for like $7, $8, something like that. They were real cheap a while back. Now I think they're a little bit more expensive now. And again, if you find them under $10, I would absolutely suggest buying these things. These are pretty good mags, and I like the fact that they're pro Second Amendment, as obvious by all the labeling on the magazines. But these are probably, out of the four that I've shown you so far, these are the ones I would suggest the most out of the cheap range. Again, if you can find these things under $8, then absolutely buy them. I really like them. Would I use them for duty use? You could. Again, because they feel kind of cheap, I don't know if you can see on here, but you can kind of squish it in a little bit, and that's the follower being squished up and down. Again, that's not a huge issue, but other magazines won't necessarily do that. They don't feel as flimsy. So, would I trust my life to these? Based on my experience, I guess I should. But again, I'm kind of a stickler and I like using nicer mags. But again, for range use, absolutely, I like these things. So this would be my suggestion for if you're looking for cheap magazines that you could also bet your life on. These are Gen 2 PMags. I absolutely love these things. These are usually what I buy in bulk if I buy a bunch of magazines. Again, there's nothing wrong with, say, a couple of those that I've shown you, but these I've never had a malfunction with, other than I have some FDE Gen 2s that I had a malfunction with, but whenever I took them apart, they're caked with mud on the inside, so that's why. Once I cleaned them, never had a problem out of them again. So steel case, brass case, PMags just work. Again, these are the Gen 2. The Gen 2s have some problems of people reporting like feed lips kind of separating or splitting over time if you leave them loaded. I've never seen that. I generally don't leave my Gen 2 PMags loaded though, simply for that reason, because why chance it whenever there's other magazines out there that are better and don't have that problem. But if you're stocking up on magazines, I think you can get these for around $8 or $9 if you buy in bulk. So if you're looking for cheap magazines, these are absolutely what I would suggest. I love PMags, and the Gen 2s are usually what I use at the range whenever I go for training. That's usually what I use these things for. So again, those are good mags. Here's a couple mags that are very similar, and I got two more over there I'll show you in a second. This is an old GI mag. It's got, I think this is, let's see, Center Industries Corporation on the bottom. Let's see. Does it say Parsons Precision Products? Say that fast 3 times in a row. Anyways, this is an old GI mag, and you can see how old it is as a restricted law enforcement only. It was made back in 2004, so that's kind of cool. I bought this at a local gun store simply because it looked cool, and I found like 4 other mags that are all beat up just like this one. And so of course, if you buy an old mag like this, replace the springs, replace a follower. I put a Magpul follower in there. If you're going to use a GI mag at all, and this goes for all the ones I'm about to say, put a Magpul follower in there because that will make the thing way more reliable. I've never had any problems out of really any kind of surplus mag, as long as you replace the spring and the Magpul follower. One of the bad things I will say about GI mags, and again this applies to all the ones I'm about to show you, is they don't always have room to insert. If you have a fully loaded mag with 30 rounds in it, if you try to put it in your AR on a closed bolt, sometimes it's really hard to get it to seat, sometimes it won't seat at all. So you may have to download these one. That's not to save the spring. People talk about that all the time. Springs are worn out with use. So being compressed, so doing this over and over and over again is what wears out a spring. It being compressed, if I just held it like here, that does not wear it out nearly as much as doing this. So just something to take note of. Kind of annoys me whenever people download their mags because they think it saves their springs. It doesn't. So again, one of the reasons why you want to download specifically for these is so you can insert your magazine on a closed bolt and to be able to do it. And that kind of goes into the Lancers here in a second, but I'll talk about that here in a minute. Let me go over all these GIs type mags. So again, if you find one of these, absolutely buy it. Cool factor, 10 out of 10. Just replace the follower with Magpul. Now this one is one I bought in bulk. I don't know if you can see on the bottom down here. This is a C product defense. These are aluminum mags also. They're black. I think they come in different colors as well. These come with the Magpul followers already, so that's nice. You don't have to buy them separate. Never had a problem out of these. I think I have probably 10 of these things, and I haven't had a problem out of any of them. So I absolutely recommend buying these. It's hard to beat a USGI just aluminum magazine. I've never had problems out of any of them as long as they have the Magpul follower in there. Again, maybe you can get a lemon here or there, but the only thing I don't like about USGI mags is one, they're noisy, and two, you can't always load them to full capacity, again for the said reason of you may not be able to insert it on a closed bolt if it's fully loaded. So on here, here's another USGI mag type. This one's a Brownells. Again, I've used this one quite a bit. This is one I have kind of as a spare mag for my rifle I use for my home, and never had a problem out of any of the Brownells mags. Again, same thing. This one's fully loaded and it will actually close. You can see it's got enough space on there. So again, each mag is slightly different. Brownells mags, perfect, good to go. You can find all these USGI mags usually for around $8, $9. And between them and the Gen 2 P mags, it's really up to personal preference. They're both probably going to be about the same reliability. I would give the edge to the P mag just because they're a little bit more durable. These can dent, and if they dent, you're pretty much going to have to throw it away. The P mags are a little bit stronger in that aspect because they'll bend and kind of flex, versus these are metal. Metal doesn't flex nearly as well as plastic does, or polymer. These are D&H mags. Again, never had any problems. They come with the Magpul followers. Again, same as the other ones. Work just fine. Basically same as the other magazines. Next on the list, this might be a little bit controversial for some of you, but these are both Lancer mags. I used to be in love with these things, and let me kind of tell you as to why I'm not. Now, first of all, the red one's just cool. You can get these things in like purple, blue, I think clear, smoke. They come in all different colors. So if you're looking for just like a fun build, these things are kind of the way to go. If you're looking for long-term storage for mags or just ready to go, these are probably what I would suggest because they have metal feed lips. So that's one thing if you're worried about, say with the P mags or any of the other polymer mags, if you're worried about those feed lips splitting or separating or stretching, these are probably what I would suggest. Now, the one negative thing about these things, and I didn't find that out until recently when I was giving them a good test, is whenever they're fully loaded, or even if you download them by 2 or 3 rounds, they are incredibly hard to insert on a closed bolt. Now, there's a couple of them. I think I have around 8 of these mags, and about 3 of them, if you download them by 1 or 2 rounds, they'll close relatively, or insert relatively easily and lock in place on a closed bolt. But if you fully load these things, there's enough space to insert it, but man, you gotta heave that thing. So you can see it's pretty difficult to push that in. And I downloaded this one mag. So if you're ever trying to do, say, speed reloads or practice like, anything tactical, then you're gonna have a hard time putting these mags in unless you're fairly strong. And again, I'm not weak by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also a small dude, so I'm not as strong as a lot of other guys. So maybe you're, a big gorilla walking around, you'll have no problem putting these things in. But I would say for an average guy, you're really gonna have to shove them in there and then give them a good smack to make sure they've actually inserted all the way. Because just playing around and going at the range and practicing, I've had these things fall out because I thought I pushed it in hard enough and it fell out because it wasn't in all the way. So again, and I cleaned all these mags and retested it, still had the same problem. So if you like being able to insert your mags, say doing tactical reloads, free reloads, whatever, and your bolt's closed and you want to insert one of these things in, test your mag and make sure it will, because these things are a pain in the butt to put in whenever they're loaded. So other than that, that's the only negative I have these. Extremely reliable. If you were to smack this magazine on the bottom, I don't know if you can see that, it will pop out rounds. So is that a negative? Maybe. Whenever you insert your magazine and it's not going in all the way, so you smack on the bottom, could that cause a malfunction? Maybe. Other mags will do that too, but this one will do it pretty much reliably every single time. You can just keep hitting, it'll keep popping them out. So take that for what it's worth. Again, the only real major problem I have with these things is inserting them on a closed bolt. So these next two mags are both Gen 3 PMags. This one has a window, this one doesn't. So these are, I would say, my go-to. These are probably the best magazines on the market. I absolutely love these things. They resolved the feed lip spreading problem that the Gen 2 supposedly had. So I've never heard of anybody having the feed lips actually spread on these things. And I leave these things loaded all the time, as you can see. They don't spread. Now, if you're worried about it, you can do like I did here, just put the little cap on there. If you're into that. The nice thing about these over, say, the, let's see where they get to. Over, say, the Gen 2 is the Gen 2, it's kind of obnoxious. It has this little lip. You can see at the bottom. It's a little bit fatter. Not by a lot, but it's a little bit fatter. You can see this is kind of a little bit more narrow on the sides. So whenever you're double stacking these mags, say on your plate carrier or something, these will kind of get in each other's way and kind of hang up on each other. Kind of like a rim cartridge would, like a Mosin Nagant rounds. The rim will kind of catch on itself whenever you're trying to pull out one mag. So just be aware of that. With the Gen 3s, it's still sticks out a little bit, but it's a lot smoother, so they kind of glide past each other. The other nice thing is, I believe it was for this specific model, but I think all the Gen 3s do it now, is for the new military round that has like the hard penetrator tip. It's like made of a different material. It was actually like gouging out the feed ramps on the AR, so they had to change the angle of where the follower like puts the bullet, so it kind of bypasses that. So I guess if you're in the military and you're shooting that type of ammo, these mags are the way to go, because it'll save your feed ramps on your ARs. I have never had a malfunction out of these. I use these, I don't use these as often because I kind of save these used for my regular mags. But the nice thing is they have an over insertion tab, or say the second gen here, you can see it doesn't have anything right here. This one has a little lip, so that prevents you from over inserting it on your magazine. So that's nice. These are more expensive though. I think these usually run around $12 to $13 usually if you find them on sale. So they're another $4 over the Gen 2s. What I like to do is I'll buy the Gen 2s if I'm buying something in bulk for just a rainy day, because they still work fine. But for my, say my plate carrier, my belt, or ones I keep in my truck or whatever, wherever I wanted to use them, you can see I got defensive rounds in here. I think that's a Spear 55 grain. It might be a heavier grain, I don't remember. But I use these for my serious use, like for my home defense rifle, or say if I'm traveling, I'm using a truck gun of some sort, you know, or AR pistol, whatever. These are what I use because I trust these the most. I've never had a malfunction out of these things. The nice thing about these, and I can say that for the Gen 2s as well, whenever you're inserting these on an AR with a closed bolt, they glide in like butter. This thing has 30 rounds in it. And whenever I'm inserting it, it takes very little effort to put these in on a closed bolt on an AR, unlike the Lancers. So I don't know if it's the material they make out of, but it's very slick. So if I push down on here, you can see it doesn't take much force at all, versus with the Lancers, I really got to shove on there. So if you're worried about doing, say, speed reloads or reloading a fully loaded mag with a closed bolt, say, you know, if you fired a bunch of rounds and you have some downtime and you need to reload real quick, these are the mags I would go for, because they are by far the easiest to load into an AR whenever the mag's fully loaded. You don't have to download these things at all. I've never had to download a PMag to be able to insert it easily. So say that's for what it's worth. Again, this is my experience. Maybe I got lucky with some of those mags. Maybe I got lemons with some of the other mags. But if y'all have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you have an idea or suggestions for a video, let us know. Appreciate you. Have a good one.